So it's time to talk about Windows 10 end of life support coming for Windows users in a few days. This is a big deal as Windows 10 support ends on October 14th, 2025, and it applies to everyone, of course, running Windows on their machines that is currently on Windows 10. They're trying to make you upgrade to Windows 11. Microsoft's big push here is going to stop security updates and very critical patches, which is going to create a bunch of security risks and unpatched vulnerabilities on Windows 10. So on their blog here, as a reminder, Windows 10 will reach the end of life support October 14th, 2025. At this point, technical assistance, feature updates, and security updates will no longer be provided. And then, of course, they make the recommendation of if you have devices running on Windows 10, we recommend upgrading to Windows 11, a more modern, secure, and highly efficient computing experience, which I completely disagree with. Instead, I think you should go to Linux if you can make the effort, because there are many problems with Windows 11. Sure, it might be more modern in a graphical sense, but to call it secure and highly efficient, I wouldn't go quite that far. So what are your options for staying on a supported Windows operating system? Well, it just says installing Windows 11 on your current PC, new PC with Windows 11, which is probably the route they want you to go with the most. Why not buy some extra hardware in order to update your operating system? Or join the extended security updates program, which is basically offering you another year of extended security updates if you're an IT pro. This is a big, big deal. As seemingly AI blogs and slop is letting us know, it's going to leave us with unpatched vulnerabilities, increased malware threats, compliance and legal risks, lack of technical support, compatibility challenges, and to take action now, as we see across many sites. Again, compliance risks, security risks, but none of these are talking about the fact that we're going to be introducing a bunch of bloat, privacy concerns, and hardware support. And I definitely want to talk about some of these things. As the Windows 10 end of life is coming to us, does this beg the question, is it time to switch to Linux? As device support is going to be interesting, especially as Microsoft keeps pushing their Copilot AI PCs, it's becoming overwhelming. But let's first talk about ads. Ads are one of the biggest reasons to start thinking about the switch. As Windows 11 keeps getting more and more ads shown on the operating system itself as you're doing things like searches, there's even guides now like on How to Geek. Windows 11 shows start menu ads now, here's how to turn them off. That's right, you have to turn off ads on an operating system as the ads are now disguised in the Windows Start menu as app recommendations. And this is true, apps that you never use will appear in the menu and you actually have to go through and go in the Windows Settings app under Personalization, Start, and turn off Show Recommendations for tips, shortcuts, news, apps, and more. How annoying. Linux doesn't do this to you. It's not going to start selling ads to you. And if it is, guess what? Choose a different Linux distribution right away, as there are hundreds to choose from. We're also going to talk about what Linux distribution I would suggest Windows users to go to at this point at the very end of the video. One of my personal favorites, and they're making a big push to help Windows 10 users out to make the transition smooth. But maybe you like ads. Either way, I personally think it's a big reason to get out of Windows entirely, as Windows 11 is only going to introduce more and more bloat features like ads. And another big thing here is, of course, bloat. As we keep getting newer and newer versions of Windows and updates, over time, Windows has accumulated a lot of extra components and subsystems, especially ones that many users never asked for or want to even use. For example, the retrace your steps with something called Recall. Recall was introduced earlier this year with the ability to enable you to quickly find and jump back into what you have seen before on your PC. Not only that, it was also taking screenshots and trying to recall those, so people were having all sorts of issues with this new recall feature being pushed to them. Of course, this is on the AI PCs or Copilot Plus, whatever they're calling it at this point, which goes right into my next thing, privacy concerns and unwanted telemetry or data collection. Recall here is able to recall whatever thing you were doing last, or at least that's what it strives to do, but the opaque telemetry or background feature usage tracking that even recall style features like this feel invasive. Are they logging or tracking activity? Are other people able to see your activity if they use your computer? I mean, it's getting very gray in that area, and it's really hard with all the privacy concerns because the controls and knobs in order to turn these things off are well hidden in the operating system itself. It's really annoying because a lot of this control for what telemetry is actually being pushed is opt-out only, and we don't even have access to open source code bases where you can audit or inspect behavior. We definitely have this with Linux, at least the kernel itself. We can audit it at any time and figure out what's actually being done with our data and if there's any telemetry. Of course, distributions can add some telemetry on by themselves, but usually this is very easy to opt out, and it's the very first thing that they ask you as soon as you log in. So of course there are big privacy concerns going to Windows 11. Who's to say that the AI and the recall features and all this fun stuff that they keep adding in that's more AI based is actually keeping our data secure? In an instance from Tom's Guide, they report Microsoft's Windows recall is reportedly still capturing passwords and social security numbers even after its relaunch. This was reported on August 1st, and the controversial Microsoft Windows Recall AI app may still be in need of security work according to testing from UK technology site The Register. The app, which takes screenshots of everything you do on your PC so you can find it later, supposedly has preventions to stop it from grabbing sensitive information like credit card numbers and passwords. However, the Register's team recently tested recall and discovered that the filter actually fails in many cases. And this isn't the first time. When recall was initially launched, they had some kind of an SQL database that was leaving data unencrypted on the system locally so other people could easily access it and just see the data without actually going through security measures. This is wild. And what also is wild is that you're not subscribed below, so make sure to take a second, subscribe below, smash that like button on the way back up. Let's continue talking about why it might be time to switch over to Linux. So we already talked about three things: ads, bloat, and privacy. But how about longevity? We keep seeing a push towards newer and newer hardware. Just because the operating system doesn't want to support older hardware, many users on Windows systems see a slowdown over time because of aging hardware. That's because the operating system keeps getting more and more bloat itself, forcing you to eventually have to upgrade your system, whether that's memory, CPU, GPU, all that fun stuff. But what's worse is introductions of things like TPM, which admittedly a lot of computers have nowadays. And it says most PCs have been shipped in the last 5 years and capable of running Trusted Platform Module version 2. And it's required to run Windows 11. Well, what if you don't have TPM on a legacy or older computer? What do you do then? Can you even run Windows 11? So now you're going to get Windows 10 end of life, and you can't run without TPM 2.0 or above. At what point do they make this 3.0 or 4.0 or whatever it is, and you can't upgrade your current system? It's another reason to start looking at Linux. Linux doesn't care about this stuff. It doesn't care about secure boot. It doesn't care about special BIOS settings. It doesn't care about TPM for the most part. All Linux distributions allow you to go ahead and install on legacy hardware. Now, some 32-bit support has been phased out. I mean, it's decades old at this point and not being used on some Linux distributions, but you can find ones that use 32-bit support as well. It's another big deal. The constant push to get rid of your hardware so you can buy new hardware, especially when they start releasing these Copilot Plus PCs with AI, well, they want you to change things out so they can make more money. But why not be able to revive that old hardware instead of being locked down to certain CPUs and certain hardware? Linux's lighter weight distributions, ones even designed for older machines, allow you to continue using that hardware, continue giving you support, and to make the switch whenever you want, whenever you're ready. So I think these are all pretty big reasons to make the switch, especially at this pivotal moment where we're going to stop receiving security updates for Windows 10. Windows 11 is a choice, of course, but I would say that there are plenty of Linux distributions to check out. Two of my favorites we're going to get into in just a moment. I also want to talk about some of the potential downsides of switching to Linux. It wouldn't be fair to just say that users should just easily make the switch and everything's going to be great. There are problems. Let's be fair. So a few things on the Linux side of things. I'm just going to move things over here just a little bit. Let's see if I can actually move the entire screen. Boom. That's better. Okay, so one thing is the learning curve. I mean, we'd all be silly if we didn't mention the learning curve. Some users are very used to Windows patterns and the way that things are showing up on the screen, and this costs a lot of time and productivity loss to make the transition to something like Linux. It can be harder to install, although nowadays it's pretty easy. As long as you can get an image on a USB and plug it into your computer, the installers usually walk you all the way through. But where things line up and how things are used is different, and leads me to the other thing, which is compatibility or software availability. So with the compatibility issue, there are just some applications that don't work on Linux and they do on Windows, especially without extra tools. And for a lot of you users who are using Windows, I'm going to make a suggestion. And here it is. It's called Winboat. Winboat runs Windows applications on Linux with seamless integration, and it really does. Currently it's in beta, but it is a fantastic platform. Basically, it's a little virtual machine that runs in the background and can run all your applications like you would on Windows. It does require a bit of resources, so it's not going to be able to run on old legacy computers with not a lot of memory or CPU threads and what have you. But for a majority of people, it will run almost every app, including things like the Adobe Suite. Yes, it's been tested on here. You can run Photoshop and other big brand name tools that a lot of people have trouble getting away from with Winboat. Definitely check this out because you do have other options. For example, like Wine, which is a way you can translate calls from Windows. That way things work directly with the Linux operating system and you don't have an extra layer of abstraction. But most of us can't do that, and it doesn't work that well, even in personal use. But things like a virtual machine in the background that seamlessly shows your applications on a Linux platform are great. Love seeing tools like this. That's one way to get over that hurdle. But going back to compatibility, of course, you're going to run into issues when using professional proprietary tools that are only meant for Windows in the first place. As we grow larger as a Linux community, hopefully we'll see things develop even better. A place where we've seen this happen is actually in gaming, but it's still a knock as some titles are just not available. We've seen a lot of updates to this over the years, especially with day one releases being seen on gaming with things like Steam and Proton. It's really come across well on Linux over the last few years. Of course, there are some edge cases here where games are not available or they just choose not to support Linux because they put things in between like anti-cheat that can't actually run on Linux to check your system. Anyways, we do also run into some driver support issues, especially with like exotic or very new peripherals. It takes a second for Linux to actually catch up and create drivers for those types of things. So sometimes you don't get the latest and greatest. For example, let's just go with NVIDIA. NVIDIA graphics cards are notoriously known for dropping day one on Windows and having drivers ready. But for things like Linux, it takes a kernel version before we actually get support. Unless you're on some bleeding edge distribution where you can update the kernel almost right away, it does take a little while to get support for hardware. But if you're using a legacy system or you're using a system that was running Windows 10, more than likely you don't have new hardware and you're pretty much going to be working out of the box for most hardware. Unless you have some extraordinary niche hardware, it'd be pretty hard pressed that it wouldn't actually work. So those are some of the issues that we're going to see on the Linux side. But I'll let you choose what you think. I mean, are ads, bloat, privacy, and longevity concerns all on switching to Windows 11? At what point are they going to say Windows 11 is also at end of life and you have to upgrade again your hardware? We've seen this time and time again. And the cool part at this point is the amazing support that we see on Linux. So now I'm going to talk about a specific Linux distribution where I think most Windows 10 users would see a great move to or switch to. It's called Zorin OS. And Zorin OS 18 is actually going to be released here in a few days. So October 14th is the official day where Windows users will lose support on Windows 10. That's exactly the day that Zorin OS 18 is coming out. It's the next version of their operating system. It is a beautiful operating system. As with their announcement they've made with Windows 10 reaching the end of life on October 14, 2025, an estimated 240 million computers that don't meet Windows 11's strict hardware requirements will be left behind. Many users are faced with the choice of either buying a new computer soon or switching to a supported modern operating system. And that's what Zorin is. Zorin OS is designed to be a perfect replacement for Windows thanks to the ease of use and powerful features, earning critical acclaim throughout the years. Now, that's said by the website Zorin OS. I'm not endorsing that, but what I will endorse is my own personal use. I have used this stuff. And what's great about it, we'll pull it up here in a moment, is that it looks and feels sort of like Windows. You can see that many of the items show up like the taskbar in a very similar place, time, date in a similar place. You have a similar launcher for the apps and a start menu, and your apps show up in a similar place as well. They have it so well thought out that you can actually get the Pro version and get pretty much an exact replica of either Windows 10 or 11. I do have a Pro version video coming out soon, so you wouldn't want to miss that one. And if you're ready to level up that Linux experience, check out my checklist, cheat sheet, and my map, all available at SavvyNik.com. You can see here that they're basically showing us web-based versions of all the fancy stuff that people use on Windows, including Adobe Photoshop, Google Docs, iCloud, Microsoft Excel, OneNote, Outlook, all the fancy stuff, right? So Of course, the web-based stuff has come a long way nowadays, so a lot of our software can be used through a browser, as that's really becoming the only app store that we need. It's just kind of showing that off. But this is not the only way that you can run. You can install something like Winboat on here and run these natively, or Wine, for example. Although I don't think you're going to get Photoshop and a few others running directly in Wine. It's a little hard for all the compatibility reasons. Regardless, we have a few layouts and so much more. Let's get into Zorin OS now, the beta version, so I can show you around and show you the options. And I want to show you briefly around the desktop here so you can kind of get a feel for what Zorin 18 is like. So welcome to Zorin OS 18. This is the welcome center as you can start a tour at the very beginning. It shows you where to get your apps from or launch them from. And here's probably one of the best things. I would launch the Zorin app experience. That way you can select which layout you want, as a lot of these look like Windows, for example. You can switch between these, no problem, but you can get more layouts with upgrading to Zorin OS. Regardless, this one looks pretty good to me, very much like Windows. Hitting next allows us to set up our online accounts like I showed before. You can link your phone with the computer if you want, and learn how to install other software that you might be using. With all that said, we can start launching things and looking around. If we go to the bottom left, you have your start menu, much like you would see in Windows 10 or even before. You have your subcategories and your users, various different directories, and you can launch software. Software here is a software store that allows you to install whatever you want, including things like Discord and games and other useful applications. Outside of that, they do have Wine available. If you want Windows app support, you click this, and then you can actually install this under Zorin OS, and it'll help you try and run Windows applications directly with Zorin using Wine and Bottles, which is great. Bottles is probably the second best thing you can install on a computer that helps you run Windows software. Bottles for Linux is a modern GUI application that helps run Windows software on Linux, and it's sort of like a friendlier front-end version of Wine, which has built-in dependency management, performance tuning, and sandboxing. What it is an open source application that easily interfaces to run Windows applications and games using Wine and DirectX Vulkan translation layers and Proton runtime integration. That might be a bunch of mumbo jumbo to you. Just know that it helps you run Windows apps. And again, Winboat is a great one too. If you want to install that instead, I would highly suggest it. Right at the start menu, you have your browser, which Brave web browser is the first one that they have locally installed here by default, which is a fantastic web browser. I use it myself. Very privacy focused. We have files. This is how you browse through your system, and it's basically your file manager. You have software and send feedback. Right at that, we have workspaces if you want to zoom through those. Then you have your wireless, wired settings, power modes, dark style if you want to go dark, and various other things like taking screenshots, settings, logging in and out. Right of that, you have a calendar with notifications, and that's about it with today's events. And that's it. Look how simple this is. No extra crap installed on the background in your desktop right away. Nothing cluttering the screen. Everything looks beautiful. It's simple and it just runs. It's a great transition for Windows users. Now, the other one I will mention, and one that most people probably use, is Ubuntu. And the reason Ubuntu is so good is it's been around for decades and decades at this point. They're very user-centric, but it does have a different feel than Windows. So that turns people off a little bit, but Ubuntu is just completely stable. They're very upfront with their support and how long it's going to be, and they have long-term support editions, which are very stable for a very long period of time, and it's easy to upgrade and get community support, as a lot of support is based around the Ubuntu distribution. And there are so many different distributions that are based solely off Ubuntu. Even Zorin OS is under the hood based around Ubuntu as well. But these are the two distributions that I would suggest for most people who are starting out with the switch from Windows to Linux. So this moment might be the best time to switch to Linux. I gave you a full breakdown of reasons why I think users should and should not switch to Linux. Again, Microsoft is going to stop providing security patches for Windows 10 starting on the 14th of October. Either way, you're going to be forced to reinstall, relicense, or adapt. The growing concern around Windows 11 and things like Microsoft account login being mandatory, AI recall features, AI in general, Copilot being deeply integrated into the operating system, and who knows what kind of data is being sent to Microsoft servers, ads and suggestions appearing. The operating system is starting to feel more like a way to sell you things than it is a utility for you to access the tools that you need on a computer. Windows 11 is going to leave millions of capable PCs behind. Linux runs beautifully on these systems, and there are many different modern Linux desktops that are available to you that run right out of the box. We already talked about Ubuntu. We've talked about Zorin OS. Check out Elementary OS if you want more of a Mac OS experience. Check out Mint if you want another beginner stable, strong community. And check out Pop! OS, which is great for gaming and productivity from System 76. There's going to be no forced updates or system hijacking. Linux lets you update when you want, roll back easily, and get updates only when you want the updates. No bloat, no privacy concerns. It just works. Anyways, let me know if you're running into the issue of losing Windows 10 support here in a few days. I'd love to hear from you in the comments section below. Do you have any other reasons you don't want to switch to Linux? Let's talk about them. Thanks for watching to the end of the video. You're a true fan. Catch me in a great community on Discord, and I'll catch you in another video. Thanks for watching.